The following program is available in high definition on Channel 700. This program is designed and produced by the community with the support of TVCOGECO.
Hello and welcome to TVCOGECO. The program tonight is Behind the Ballot. This is part of TVCOGECO's comprehensive election coverage for federal election 2015. I'm Dave Glover. I will be moderating the federal all-candidates debate for Northumberland-Peterborough South. In the TVCOGECO studios, we have 3 of your 4 candidates who are vying for your support on Election Day, October 19th. Conservative candidate Adam Moulton has declined TVCOGECO's invitation to participate in tonight's debate. So for the next 2 hours, candidates will discuss, debate, and lay out the political platforms on various topics and questions put together by TVCOGECO staff and volunteers. Now, before we get started, the rules of tonight's debate are as follows. Before the debate, each candidate began. We picked a number out of a hat for seating purposes and opening statements. Each candidate will be given up to 3 minutes for their opening statement. We will then move into the question-answer part of the debate. Each candidate will then be given up to 2 minutes to answer each question. Once each candidate has had an opportunity to answer the questions, the floor will then be open for 3 minutes of open debate between the candidates. The order for answering questions by the candidates will change throughout the debate. For example, the opening statements will go in the order of 1, 2, 3, and the first question will then go to 2, 3, 1, and so on. And finally, each candidate will be given 2 minutes at the end for closing statements. These will be made in reverse order of tonight's beginning. Now that we have explained the rules of the debate, let's begin with the opening statements from the candidates. And the order for this will be Russ Christianson, Patricia Sinnot, and Kim Rudd. Russ, you go first.
Great. Thanks a lot, Dave, and thanks Patricia and Kim for being here too, and the volunteers. This election is about change, and it's about who you're going to trust to bring that change. We've had 10 years of Stephen Harper's Conservatives. People are really fed up. People realize that Mr. Harper is acting like a dictator. I was at the Rose Glen retirement home today in Port Hope, speaking to some of the elder citizens in our riding. And they got very worked up when we started talking about some of the things that Mr. Harper has done undemocratically. So, for example, the negotiation of about 34 free trade, quote unquote, agreements that are really investor protection agreements and sidestep democratically elected governments to protect the profits of large corporations internationally. And some of the barriers to that in terms of what the Government of Canada and the provinces could do, for example, is introducing a pharmacare program. So the Trans-Pacific Partnership has rules around drug patents and protections that would not allow us to do bulk buying and generic drugs. We don't feel that that's a fair trade agreement. The other thing about Trans-Pacific Partnership that's a big issue, especially in Northumberland-Peterborough South, is with dairy farmers, poultry farmers, and egg farmers. All of those are in the supply management sector, and those farmers are able to make a living on the farm and maintain a family farm. Since Mr. Harper got into power, we've lost about 30,000 family farms. And if we go ahead with this TPP, which Mr. Harper's negotiating in secret, it's never been released to the public, and it's never been debated in Parliament. If he goes ahead with that agreement, we're going to lose quite a number of family farms right in Northumberland-Peterborough South. And in this rural community that we live in, even in the small cities and centres like Coburg or Port Hope or Keene or Norwood, those centres also depend on the farm economy. So if we lose those farms, the resilience of our communities is going to diminish, and we're going to find ourselves without a secure food system, because it's more than just about maintaining the family farm. It's also about families getting good food to eat, nutritiously available and locally grown. So one of the things that we want to make sure is that we look at those trade agreements and we negotiate fair trade agreements, not free trade agreements. A number of those are just contracts. We can certainly open them up and we need to make sure that our democratically elected government and provincial governments and municipal governments have the right to do public procurement and protect our healthcare system.
Thank you, Russ. Next for her opening statements, Patricia Sinnot with the Green Party of Canada.
Hello, I'm Patricia Sinnot and I have lived in Port Hope for 13 years. Before that, I lived on the Oak Ridges Moraine near Blackstock. And I'm here today as your Green Party candidate in Northumberland-Peterborough South. The events of 9/11 started me thinking about my retirement. So a year later, I bought my grandparents' house in Port Hope. In 2003, I was appointed to the steering committee for the Port Hope Community Health Centre, which opened its doors in 2008. Primary health care reform has been my passion for 20 years. I have worked for 30 years in Durham Region as a hospital pharmacist manager, and working in healthcare has opened my eyes. Being in the hospital setting, you see really sick people, and working in the emergency department, you see people that are sort of at their wits' end with problems. And it got me interested in how we could shift healthcare spending to illness prevention and health promotion. What can we do about primary health care to make it more effective? So that's why I got involved with the Community Health Centre. And I also believe that health is about more than the absence of illness. It includes a safe shelter, a roof over your head, a good job, education, access to good food, social support, and personal safety. And the World Health Organization first defined health in terms of these social determinants. I volunteered on several municipal committees, then entered politics in 2010 in Port Hope. The same year, I met Elizabeth May at a Green Party conference, and once I heard Elizabeth speak, I was so impressed with her intellect and intelligence, I signed up to join the Green Party on the spot, and I've been a member ever since. The Green core values are my values: nonviolence, sustainability, social justice, ecological wisdom, participatory democracy, and respect for diversity. Priorities in this riding include, first, the local economy. With the loss of manufacturing jobs, many people are underemployed or working part-time. And as farmers age, we're not sure now who's going to take over the family farm. And then, as Russ mentioned, we have some additional challenges with the Trans-Pacific Partnership under negotiation. 2, healthcare. As we age, people are worried about where they're going to be able to live. Can they stay home? Will there be supports to help them? Electoral reform. Right now, the power is centralized in the Prime Minister's office, and we need to deal with that. And we also need to get away from this first-past-the-post system to get people involved in proportional representation where every vote counts. Poverty is a big issue in Northumberland, and there are long lists of people waiting for affordable housing. And the environment. The Energy East pipeline has been ruled against by the OEB. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Patricia. And lastly, Kim Rudd, your Liberal candidate for Northumberland-Peterborough South. Your opening statements.
Thank you, Dave. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Engaged voters are our best chance of making sure that this is Stephen Harper's last stand, if you will, in terms of being the Prime Minister of the country. Mr. Harper is counting on fear and racism to win another majority. He's trying to distract you with a politics of prejudice and hopes that you aren't paying attention to the things that really matter. Things like jobs, like democratic reform, affordable housing, more money for seniors, a better plan for infrastructure, a tax reduction for middle-income Canadians, and a more generous and tax-free Canada Child Benefit that will lift 316,000 children out of poverty. This election should be about a plan to get our economy rolling and Canadians working. It is the Liberal plan for fairness and growth that will make that happen. In Northumberland-Peterborough South, we have seen record job loss in this community. We have seen not just good manufacturing jobs go, but we've also seen an increase in what I'll call precarious employment. That has to be job one. When people have good paying jobs, they have money to spend in our downtowns, we have an economy that's growing, and we have a community that is healthy. Mr. Harper wants you to believe lies and untruths so that you forget one simple fact. Mr. Harper has the worst economic record of any Prime Minister in 80 years. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you very much. You've heard their opening statements. Our first question tonight will be going to Patricia Sinnot. The first question is going to deal with what many residents here in Northumberland-Peterborough South feel is the major issue in this riding, and that being the high unemployment rate. The riding is seeing the unemployment rate almost 3 to 4 percentage points higher than the national average. Once you become member of Parliament, what will you do to create jobs and growth in this riding, and also to help attract business and industry?
Yes, good question. And yes, jobs are a very high priority for people everywhere, and particularly here in Northumberland. The Green Party has some very clear ideas on how to help small business particularly. 70% of Canadians are employed by small business owners. So that's the segment of the market that we can do best to stimulate by simplifying the paperwork around small business submissions to the government, Canadian Revenue Agency, etc. Also reducing taxes for small business owners to encourage entrepreneurs and people with great ideas to come forward and start businesses. There will be investments for clean technology businesses particularly. That's part of getting off oil and moving towards the use of renewables for our energy source in this country. So there'll be lots of opportunities there to get involved in the new clean technologies. There will be free tuition for students, and debt over $10,000 per student will be forgiven. So this should encourage people to undertake education at colleges, universities, or apprentice in the trades. We certainly need tradespeople. A very important part of the Green Platform is energy conservation. So we want to have an army of carpenters and other home maintenance people going out to houses and retrofitting more efficient windows, caulking leaks, filling gaps, reducing energy consumption and heating bills. That's a great savings, and that'll generate a lot of jobs. Municipal infrastructure will also generate jobs for youth and give them experience close to home by being funded to the tune of $6.4 billion per year.
Thank you, Patricia. All right, the same question to you, Kim. The most prevalent issue in this riding is jobs. So once you become the Member of Parliament, what will you do to create job growth here in the riding and help attract business and industry?
Well, as a small business owner and entrepreneur, I've created over 50 jobs in this riding already, so I know how to do it. I'm honored to have been appointed to Justin Trudeau's National Economic Team with a focus on small business and entrepreneurship. To that vein, we have created a Made in Northumberland-Peterborough South for Northumberland-Peterborough South jobs plan. This jobs plan lays out a number of things that are directly related to Northumberland-Peterborough South and includes some of the announcements that we've made around youth unemployment. It's a staggering 14%. We have a plan to get 40,000 youth a year employed for 3 years in a row, and we're doing that by giving employers a break on their EI premiums. We have $25 million going into pre-apprenticeship programs because we know there are lots of jobs in the trade. We've just made a very large announcement on research and innovation, and that innovation will be in things like agriculture, it will be on green energy, it will be on science and innovation technologies and manufacturing, and various what I'll call cluster groups with our community. Northumberland-Peterborough South has lots of advantages. We're close to the GTA. We have access to the U.S. market very closely. We also have an opportunity to have be an attractive community for people not just to live in, but for people to work in. We have a large senior population, as we know, and seniors require services, and services are jobs. So there are many, many things we can do. What we can't do is do what has been happening for the past 10 years under Stephen Harper, and that's nothing. We have 1% growth in this country that's completely not acceptable, and we're feeling that pain right here in Northumberland-Peterborough South.
Well, thank you very much. Russ Christianson, same question to you, sir. When you become the Member of Parliament for Northumberland-Peterborough South,
when better.
what will you do to create job growth and to help attract business and industry to our riding?
Yeah, this is a really key question for this election. And people in Northumberland-Peterborough South deserve some clear and straight answers. The Harper government plan has failed. We've lost 400,000 good manufacturing jobs just in Ontario since 2006. Those jobs have been replaced by precarious employment, part-time, low-income, low-wage jobs that are without benefits, without pensions. So when you look at what we need to do here in Northumberland-Peterborough South, I've been a small business startup specialist for about 30 years. I've helped start up about 180 businesses that have about a 70% success rate. I don't take credit for that. I give the credit to the founders of the businesses. I've just helped them out. But small businesses actually produce about 80% of our new jobs. So we really have to focus on that. We've got lots of opportunities here in terms of through protecting supply management and value-added agriculture at the Ontario Agriventure Food Centre. We can kickstart manufacturing here in Northumberland-Peterborough South through an accelerated capital cost allowance and a research and development fund that the NDP is offering. Infrastructure, municipal infrastructure, roads, bridges, water systems, sewage treatment, etc. We would provide an infrastructure fund that is significant, and municipalities need it. They've been neglecting infrastructure for many years. We would also tie that to apprenticeship jobs for young people. Healthcare, we'd invest in healthcare. We'd hire 7,000 new doctors, nurses, and nurse practitioners. We would also look at business succession for farmers because we've got an aging farm population. Lots of young people would like to farm, so there's a great opportunity to help them do that. The other thing we do is eliminate unpaid internships for young people. So we would create paid positions and co-op positions for youth.
Well, thank you for that, Russ. Well, at this point, we'd like to open this question up to the floor. If any of the candidates would like to add or say something else in rebuttal to what any of the other candidates have said, please indicate you would. Patricia, you'd kick that off for us.
Yes, I'd just like to mention a couple of other features we have in Northumberland-Peterborough South. We have the newly enlarged Peterborough Airport. So that's an asset that we need to give some thought to. How can we use that to advantage? And I do know that the flying school in Buttonville has been relocated to the Peterborough Airport in this riding, and also that they are training airplane mechanics at the Peterborough Airport. So those are job creation activities, and it's bringing people to the area. But what else can we do? Because right now I think that the airport is primarily used for commercial use, but maybe there's opportunity for passengers tourism.
Russ, you'd like to respond?
Well, I think that's fine. I think one thing that none of us talked about and is often neglected is our First Nations communities, because we have two First Nations communities here. We have the Alderville First Nation and the Hiawatha First Nation. They do need some help with ongoing issues around treaty issues and education, job creation. So there's things that we can do there, youth unemployment, particular to First Nations. The NDP will negotiate nation to nation. I just want to make a point about Kim's jobs plan for Northumberland-Peterborough South. I applaud her in releasing that to the public. That's great. The only challenge is that she kind of misses the boat on it because there's a whole number of existing plans and strategies and lots of people locally working on those, municipalities, etc. There's official plans, and those are not referred to in Kim's plan at all, and it's, you know, as if their plans and their ideas don't matter.
Well, Kim, you'd like to respond to that?
Well, you know, it's interesting, Russ, because as I stated when I released this plan, we've been working on this for about a year and a half, maybe a little longer, and certainly we're in consultation not just, and yes, it's not in here, but it's in the 3 PhD researchers put this together, and trust me, there is a documentation of all of the people that they spoke to, and I have been talking to the mayors.
Well, none
and
of
we
the
have
references to the plans that are already existing, like the official plan for Northumberland County, took 2 years of consultations to create that plan.
And I was involved in
but
that.
That's
I
all
was
I'm
a
saying
stakeholder.
is it's not referred. And now you're saying it's PH3. Is that the name of the what's the name of the organization?
No,
the
I said there
organization?
were 3 PhD researchers that did this.
3 PhD okay, I see. That wrote the plan.
They're
so
very
you didn't write the
Russ,
plan.
let's let Kim respond.
If I could,
We've raised that
thank
issue.
you. I actually did. What they did was write it. I, with them, went to meet with organizations like Watton Employment Services, with the county, Dan Borwick, our economic development director. We've met with the mayors. I attended community council meetings in most of the municipalities. To go when I was, Brighton is the perfect example. Went down and talked to the mayor, talked about what their issues are. They are having, they have a large senior population. They don't have anything to attract jobs.
Well, usually when PhD people write a report, they include their references, and they should include those things.
Well,
I think,
you know what, Russ?
so that we know that it's a comprehensive document, that those people that have spent a lot of time and energy creating their own economic development plans have been respected and have been included in that overall plan.
The interesting thing is, because of our meetings with them and our conversations with them, they absolutely know they've been respected and included. This was for public. I'm not going to kill any more trees putting all of that information in here. We allowed this.
It's
we
just
allowed
a page
this to
of
be
references that you need to add then.
And I will say that that may have been the way you did it. We chose to do it this way, but you certainly can go and talk to Dan Borwick and talk to the mayors. And I sat as a participatory, not advisor, but certain contributor on those plans. You may not know, I was an economic director for the town.
I've been doing economic development, Kim, for 30 years, and I've written hundreds of business plans.
This is not a business plan.
Excuse me. And it's a strategy, it's an economic development plan, which is similar to a business plan. And you need to look at what the existing documentation, so you don't repeat the work that's already been done. And particularly in these rural communities and in local communities, it's important to look at what people have already come up with in terms of strategies,
Russ,
and where the areas are that are really low-hanging fruit, but also longer-term potential. So,
Russ, if you read it carefully, you notice we talk about the plastics industry. That has already been in existence, and under the current Harper government has been left off. We are rejuvenating that. So some of these things were there and have been left off. And you know, I would say, Russ, with all due respect, this is your 5th time running. You could have written a jobs plan any time. I took the initiative, and I'm very proud of it.
There's a jobs plan. There's every Clarington has the Board of Trade
doing their work in
doing their economic development. Northumberland County has an economic development department. Alderville First Nation has an economic development plan and department. Hiawatha does as well. Norwood, Asphodel, all these different communities, Newcastle, Orono, they all have their own plans already, and it's great to add to those and work together with them and provide some federal government funding. All I'm saying is that when you write a document and you do that kind of plan and strategy, you need to make sure that you reference the plans that have already been done, and there was no evidence of that whatsoever in your plan.
Okay, I'm gonna cut it off there.
Really.
I think, and the voters can go to Kim's website and find that out directly. We're going to move on to our next question. Our next question deals with the agricultural industry right here in Northumberland-Peterborough South. Many rural areas here in Ontario and across Canada, indeed, are seeing the age of the persons working on their farm increasing every day. No longer are we seeing farms being passed from one generation to the next. What we are seeing is family farms being sold or their operations simply being closed completely. Now, as a newly elected Member of Parliament for Northumberland-Peterborough South, what are your plans to help attract the younger generation back into the agricultural industry and to keep family farms alive, profitable, and operational? Each candidate will have 2 minutes, and we'll start with Kim Rudd.
Great, thank you, Dave. Well, as we know, farmers feed cities, but actually farmers feed everyone. And I have been very fortunate over the past 5 and 6 years to be able to tap in and talk to and meet with so many of our agriculture community folks. What we found, and Russ and Patricia, I think, have talked a little bit about certainly our concerns around the Trans-Pacific Partnership and supply management. There are lots of other things. Innovation needs to happen in agriculture to ensure that it's sustainable. And we can talk about what that looks like. I don't think we can necessarily talk about it in 2 minutes. But what I have done is I have gone ahead and met with all 3 MPPs in this riding to talk about what we can do for agriculture as partners. And I have met with the mayors. What we can do with partners to make sure that we're meeting the needs of our agriculture community. I will say that I've had the opportunity to meet with a gentleman just in the north part of the riding that has an excellent idea for creating, it's actually 15 to 20 jobs. And I met with him a few weeks ago. I made a call to the Chief of Staff of the Minister of Agriculture to say, here's a really great idea. And I know that they're putting some things forward to you, and I appreciate if somebody'd have a look at it. I can't influence it, but I can certainly make them aware of it. I think of Brand New Foods, which is down by me in the east end of Cobourg, and working with them over the past year to try and make sure they access the grants and things that were accessible to them. Innovation, I'm using Brand New Foods as a perfect example. Kale chips. Who would have heard of kale chips 10 years ago? They have a market throughout North America, and they're expanding into markets beyond. So innovation, to my mind, as well as listening to our agriculture community one-on-one, understanding what their needs are, or how we're going to make sure we protect our farms. We can talk a lot more about the TPP and those things later on.
All right, thank you for that. Russ, same question to you, sir. With the aging population and the loss of family farms, you alluded to this in your opening remarks. What would you do as the Member of Parliament for Northumberland-Peterborough South to ensure that we bring the younger generation back to farming, and also to preserve family farms so that they're profitable and remain operational?
Right, so I think the last part of your statement or question is the key, which is preserving family farms. We've got a long tradition of 5- and 6th-generation farms in Northumberland-Peterborough South all over the riding. Many of those farms are able to make a living on the farm because of supply management. The NDP has strongly supported supply management from its beginning in the 60s and 70s. And I've been around talking to a number of dairy farmers and poultry farmers in the riding, and they all say that they're very concerned, afraid even, about the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, and that in order to maintain their economically viable operations on the farm, they need to maintain that supply management. So we have to make sure that family farms survive, first of all, so there's something for the young people to come to. Now, there are a lot of young people that want to farm, and some of them didn't grow up on a farm. They're university educated. And there's an interesting program called Farm Start, which provides an opportunity for young people to lease land at a relatively low cost and learn to market garden, and the equipment is provided, and some of the markets, so that they can get access to farm markets and community shared agriculture projects. That's one of the ways. That's an innovative program. We could bring it to Northumberland-Peterborough South to help young people start to get involved. We have to find ways to transfer the farms from one generation to the next. So we're going to need to get access to capital for those young people, because if you're going to start a dairy operation or take one over, that is a long-term investment, and it's millions of dollars potentially. So even though they're small businesses, they're still significant in terms of capital. The Ontario AgriVentures Food Centre in Colborne is a fantastic opportunity for local farmers to add value and make more income. And I'm also sitting on the Northumberland County Food Policy Committee, which is a great group.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that, Russ. I'm sorry we had to cut you short there. Patricia Sinnot, the same question to you. We know there is definitively a loss here in Northumberland-Peterborough South. We're seeing family farms disappearing altogether. They're not being passed down from generation to generation. They're not even being sold. So what will you do as the newly elected member for Northumberland-Peterborough South? What are your plans to attract the younger generation back into the agriculture industry and to keep family farms alive, profitable, and operational?
Well, I agree with my colleagues that we need to provide financial support to enable the younger generation to stay on the family farm and make a viable business of it. And one of the problems that's cropped up is the assessment value placed on agricultural property. Because of the high values on the land, that's what's causing the excessive cost for taking over or buying the family farm. So that needs to be reviewed as well. And I think research needs to be focused more on small production, market garden, organic food, local markets, eat local campaigns rather than big factory farm concepts and GMO grains, etc. So the Green Party can influence that at the federal level to encourage smaller farm operations to go after those smaller markets, because selling locally solves a lot of problems in terms of delivery, and it certainly provides people with what they're looking for. People want to eat local and eat healthy. The processing facility in Colborne, Russ has already mentioned. I believe there's a good example of an interesting venture in Centerton growing hydroponic tomatoes. So it's one crop. And there also is another example that I'm aware of in Port Perry, out of the riding, but they grow only baby salad greens. So again, it's one crop. These people are really specialized. They're good at conserving energy and recycling water and providing fresh produce to local markets on a regular, quick basis, so you're eating healthy food. And I think those kinds of approaches are new and different from the great big farm operations. Thanks.
All right. Well, thank you for that. We're going to open it up now for all the candidates. Russ, you had your hand up first.
Yeah, I'd like to just take a minute to talk about three other things. So the NDP took 2 years to go across the country in consultation, right across the country with various farm organizations, food groups, nutritionists, health practitioners, etc., to create a comprehensive food and farming strategy. So that is available on our website. It's called Everyone Eats, and it's about sustainability, it's about food security and sovereignty, supporting the local food movement, which is a consumer-driven movement. And one of the other things I'd like to mention is that school food programs are a really great idea. You can bring local food into the schools and make sure that students have the proper nutrition to help their brains develop, and also make sure that they have the energy and awareness to learn the lessons that are being taught in school. So there's so many creative and interesting ways of supporting local agriculture and getting young people involved. Farmers in the classroom, that's something that we just talked about at the Northumberland Food Policy Committee. We need to educate young people about where the food comes from, because a lot of them think it just comes from the fridge or the supermarket.
Patricia, you had a comment?
Yes, I would just like to mention agritourism. I think people these days, when they're taking a weekend or a week's holidays, they're looking for an immersion experience, something different. And if you live in the big city, coming out to Northumberland-Peterborough South and staying on a family farm, and it could be with a dairy goat herd, or it could be a market garden, or it could be apples, whatever. But coming out and sharing the experience of the work that is involved on a daily basis in running that farm operation is actually something people are willing to pay for. So it's another source of revenue.
Kim,
I just want to say, we have a tendency to think of farming and family farms in terms of cattle and crops, cash crops. But there is a new and emerging agricultural field coming out, and it's cideries. If you go down to the Big Apple, I was fortunate enough to be there for the grand opening. The gentleman who owns it also owns Wapoose Winery in the county. And they have actually created a cidery right there, a license to sell. There's a movement to get it sold in wineries and wineries to be sold at the cidery. They have taken what was the Big Apple, and I've been here for almost 40 years, and I know the Big Apple's gone through a number of sort of variations, but I'll tell you, they have put some resources into it. They allow for community market gardens on the weekend. They give them the space and the tent, and they have really become a huge employer in this community. So there is some innovation happening out there.
Okay, we're actually going to go to Patricia next. Patricia had her hand up first.
Having recently visited the William Street Brewery in Coburg, and I'm very pleased to see that business up and running, and I was told that they're not able to source their hops locally, and hops for beer lovers are something that really influence the flavor of the beer. So there's a crop that is not available, at least as far as the people that operate that brewery, there's some, lots of opportunity there to look at those little niche markets and crops, and breweries, cideries, wineries. These are all things that people come to spend the day or the weekend visiting, doing, eating, drinking.
Okay, Russ, you had
Yeah,
one more
one of the
point.
most popular things for people to do in Northumberland-Peterborough South is to go to local farmers markets. And right now, they are abundant with all the harvest and the food. And the other thing is that it's not just about the food that you get there, it's the social relationships that you build with the farmers, it's the trust that's built between people, it's the cultural activities that happen at those farmers markets. They have music and they have cooking demonstrations and all these kinds of things. So I'd really strongly support our viewers tonight to consider going to your local farmers market. They'll be going until I guess about the end of October, close to the end of October. So really consider doing that.
Well, now that's great advice. Actually, the most local farmers markets around here are open until the Thanksgiving weekend. So there you have it. That was a great round. Our next question is going to be directed at Russ first. This debate, we've asked viewers and other folks to submit questions to us. This question comes to us from David Sheffield of Port Hope. Now, Mr. Sheffield is asking, what would you do as our Member of Parliament to help and to create opportunities for the hungry and poor in Northumberland, Canada, and around the world?
Opportunities. Okay.
To
All right.
help and to create opportunities.
Okay, good. So there's a lot of talk in this election about the middle class, and I think, lower income people are kind of being left out. So I'm really glad, David, that you've asked this question. It's really important, because how a society takes care of its most unfortunate people is a measure of its success and compassion. So one of the things that lower income people need is affordable housing. So the NDP has a full strategy to introduce an affordable housing right across the country, including Northumberland-Peterborough South. We'll build thousands of units over the coming years. And one of the things that happened in 1995 with the cuts from the Liberal government, Mr. Martin and Jean Chrétien, they cut the social transfers for affordable housing and for co-op housing, a model, by the way, that's exported around the world from Canada, co-op housing. And then that played into the Mike Harris Conservative government in Ontario, who cancelled all the contracts for affordable and co-op housing, saying that the government didn't need to be involved with that because the private sector was going to build the affordable housing. Well, exactly zero affordable housing was built by the private sector. So we need government to take a role and the federal government to take a lead in building that kind of affordable housing. We also need to increase the transfers to the provinces so that Ontario Social Security can be increased in terms of payments, and also disability payments. We have a plan for disabled people as well, and they need opportunities for employment. And we have a plan with people with disabilities for employment for those people. And also, I talked earlier about unpaid internships. When students graduate from post-secondary education with, on average, a $28,000 debt, they are really set back. They can't find a decent job. We need paid internships and co-op placements, not unpaid internships.
All right, well, thank you very much for that. The question next goes to Patricia Sinnot. Again, the question comes to us from a viewer, David Sheffield of Port Hope. And Mr. Sheffield asks, what would you do as our Member of Parliament for Northumberland-Peterborough South in Parliament to offer any help and opportunity to the hungry and poor in Northumberland County, Canada, and around the world?
Yes, well, thank you for the question, David. The Green Party of Canada has a number of items in the platform which will assist people living in poverty. Housing First is a concept of providing shelter, safe shelter to people who are otherwise perhaps living on the street, to take them in with their issues, whether they have mental health or addictions issues, provide them that safe shelter, surround them with support, and make services available to them on an as-needed basis when they're ready to accept those services. And feeding and keeping people safe is the place to start with looking after homeless people. The Green Party will fund municipal infrastructure to the amount of $6.4 billion per year, which is 1 point of GST. And that infrastructure funding is to be used for roads, bridges, water, sewer, affordable housing. And the commitment is to build 20,000 units in the first year and each year thereafter, as well as renovating 8,000 units per year, because the older units will need upgrading, and because Greens are concerned about energy conservation, we need to make sure that we're not wasting fuel by heating units that are leaky. There will be a guaranteed livable income, and this will be a wrap-up of social assistance and disability payments, so that everyone has an income that will allow them to choose where they are going to live and to purchase their groceries at the grocery store rather than depending on the food bank for food. There will be a dental plan for youth under the age of 18, so that preventive dental work will be done for all to reduce the risk of dental problems later in life, which we know also impact on health. And free tuition for college and university programs will help people to get the education they need, as well as apprenticeships to gain skills in the trades.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Patricia. Up next with the same question, the question from our viewer from Port Hope, David Sheffield. And to you, Kim, what would you do as our Member of Parliament for Northumberland-Peterborough South to offer help and opportunity to the hungry and poor in Northumberland, Canada, and around the world?
Well, Dave, this is a very complex question, and in 2 minutes I have this feeling we're going to have a more fulsome discussion about it in a minute. Certainly jobs are one of the ways that we help lift people out of poverty, but I have a brother on Ontario Disability Support, and I know how difficult it is for him to make ends meet. There are things that we can do. We have announced $20 billion for affordable housing. I think that is one of the most crucial things I'm hearing as I'm going around the riding about the need for affordable housing. Also, a 10% increase in guaranteed income supplement for seniors, single seniors, because we know they're at the most disadvantaged. They're often women who didn't work outside the home when they had children, when they were younger, and are finding themselves living on really not enough to get by. The other thing we talked, I think it was the child care benefit, Canada Child Benefit I already mentioned, which brings 316,000 children out of poverty. That's not a small number, that's significant. And I know we've mentioned the Aboriginal community. We also made an Aboriginal announcement in consultation with the Aboriginal communities. And what we've said is we will lift the 2% cap that has been there for way too long. We will fund education, on-reserve education, at the same rate we fund off-reserve education, which is something that always should have been the way it should have always been that way. And the other thing is a significant contribution in terms of infrastructure. We all hear about the challenges with water and housing, and some of us, especially First Nations in the north. But even locally, and I talked to Chief and Council at Hiawatha, and they have some issues with old wells and effluent in the water. So there are other things even locally in terms of our First Nations that need to be addressed.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Now we're going to open it up for 3 minutes of open debate. Russ Christianson, you had your hand up first, sir.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that the issue around hunger was brought up, and one of the things that we really need to look at is food security, making sure that people have adequate access to good, nutritious, and delicious food every day. So the NDP has a plan for that would also support local agriculture at the same time. Many, as Kim was saying, many senior single women particularly are living in poverty. We would immediately increase the GIS, the Guaranteed Income Supplement, for them and pull them right out of poverty, about 200,000 across Canada. We can do that right away. The other thing we would do is decrease the retirement age from 67 to 65. Mr. Harper unilaterally increased that retirement age, and that takes quite a bit of money away from people who are entering retirement. Mental health is often an issue with people who have lower incomes, and we have a mental health strategy for children and youth.
Okay, thank you for that. And I quickly want to remind the candidates that the question is about opportunities and help for the hungry and the poor. I know that includes various groups, and we'll probably be getting to those other groups, seniors, what have you, as we move on. Pat, you had your hand up.
Yes. I just wanted to add that part of the Green Party plan is to excuse taxes on anyone with an income of $20,000 a year or less. So that first $20,000 there would be no tax payable. And also we're looking at providing daycare in workplaces to provide tax incentives to employers to develop programs on site to make it easier for people to return to work.
All right, Kim, you had a response to that?
Well, I think that and I've actually talked to David Sheffield about this a few times, and we're not, as a community collectively, whether it's Northumberland-Peterborough South or the province or the country or to your question, Dave, about the world, we're not having this conversation because, to be fair, there's lots of other conversations happening, but this one seems to always get moved to the side. And I know for years in this riding we have had the poverty action groups and other organizations that are driven mostly by people who have the passion, and there has not been the political will. I would really like to see, and I certainly would commit to doing what I could to make sure that there is a real conversation around this, and some of the solutions are found not by government and politicians, but actually by people like David Sheffield and people within his organization and within the community that are experiencing these things firsthand.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that, you know, one of the things that we can do is help people, young families who are in lower income, help them get another job in the family. So if there's a couple, by providing $15 a day childcare, which is one of the key planks. It's been talked about for a year from the NDP campaign. It's based on the Quebec model. It's lauded by childcare and early childhood education experts across Canada. And that's something that makes it affordable for people to then go and get another job. In other words, another person in the couple, often the woman, and increase their family income, but it also stimulates the economy. It has a multiplier of 2 times.
Okay, and Kim, I think we'll give the last word to you on this.
Sure. Russ mentioned childcare, and as you know, I have a 30-some-year history in childcare in this community, and provincially and federally, and I do have a challenge with the NDP plan. No one has been fighting for universal childcare more than I have in this riding, but there are some fundamental flaws with the program, and one of which is how long it's going to take to implement. But the other thing is, I've read it, it's very urban-centric. It's very urban-focused. And I was one of the people that helped...
Kim, you know, the thing is...
Okay, well, hold on. Okay, we'll let her finish, and then we'll let you respond.
Okay.
I was one of the people that got the first on-farm childcare here in this riding and got the in-home care to address those needs of parents who worked shift work or worked jobs where they were, especially in rural communities, where they didn't have access to a center. So I guess that's one of the, I have a number of concerns, and the Quebec model's had its issues, but I guess how is the plan going to address rural childcare issues?
Okay, Russ, go ahead.
So, first of all, it's not a one-size-fits-all plan, but it is a national plan that will address, the reality is that most of the population in Canada is in urban centres, right? That's the reality. And they need childcare. They need it to be affordable. The Liberal government in 1993 promised childcare. They promised in each successive election. They never delivered on that childcare.
That's because you toppled the government.
Excuse me.
Who make is going
They
on?
never delivered on the childcare. The NDP is firmly committed to delivering on affordable childcare, a national program, negotiating it together with the provinces to make sure that we fit what their needs are in their existing programs, that we can support them and piggyback with those. So it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. We are maintaining child benefits so that families that want to have one parent stay at home can do that and still benefit from some of that money that they get from like a family allowance is basically what it's called.
Okay.
And that offers a choice for them. But we need to provide affordable childcare in this country.
Can I ask a point of clarification? So in terms of the childcare, we can agree or disagree on that because, and just so you know,
people need childcare.
No, they do. But I was around that table when we negotiated the Kelowna Accord, and it was ready to go until the government was toppled. So, and then Stephen Harper.
For Aboriginal communities.
No, it wasn't. I was there. It was Ken Dryden that led it. Trust me,
Kelowna.
I know. And that died when Stephen Harper came in 2000, or when he came in. After
it was
the
promised
Accord.
For 13 years, it was never delivered.
Negotiating with provinces and territories is not an easy thing, but I guess I'm going to go back to my question, or what I want to ask about how you said a family, I'm not sure what you said.
It's a family allowance, it's
so
a child
is that
benefit.
part of the same plan that Stephen Harper has in terms of income splitting?
No, it's not income splitting.
So you have another plan on top of the income
No,
splitting?
it's this, no, we don't
Okay,
have,
then I'm
we don't
confused.
allow, we will continue the income splitting for pensioners because that
As will
really
we.
works for
Yes,
them, and and I
absolutely.
know that the Conservatives have been kind of spreading this lie or
This is true.
rumor
Yeah.
about this income splitting for seniors be eliminated by the Liberals.
Yeah, I'm
And I
going
know
to
it's
stop you there,
not.
and it may seem unfair, but our next question, I believe, is dealing with
Okay, so
seniors
I won't
issues.
talk- let's
So
talk about childcare
we'll move to that. Just a reminder that the viewers, you are watching TVCOGECO. This is our comprehensive coverage of federal election 2015. In the studio are 3 of the 4 candidates who are vying for your vote on October 19th. An invitation was extended to Conservative Party candidate Adam Moulton. He declined that invitation. The next question deals with seniors. As I said, Stats in Canada on September 28th, Stats Canada released details that stated for the first time in the history of this country, the number of people over the age of 65 outnumbered the people under the age of 15. So the question is, what is your party's plan to ensure that these individuals who were the backbone of Canada and made this country what it is today, quite frankly, are not forgotten, and that they will have the chance to live a life above the poverty line and not have to continue to work well into their retirement years? Now, we're going to start with Patricia Sinnot, but I also want to interject one other important fact is that we here in Northumberland-Peterborough South have the largest concentration of folks over the age of 65 in the province of Ontario and quite possibly the country. Patricia, you're first.
Yes, well, I'm an example. I moved here to retire, and I'm meeting so many other people that are doing the same thing. We like the community here, we like the weather here, lots of reasons. But the Green Party of Canada has a senior strategy, a whole number of programs that will assist seniors in the retirement years. And as was mentioned earlier, first of all, you can retire, draw CPP OAS at 65, not 67. The guaranteed livable income would apply to seniors, so rather than raising GIS or anything else, the proposal from the Greens is to give everyone the guaranteed livable income that needs it. It would be taxed back from those that don't need it. And that would be funded by pricing carbon. So this brings in the energy switch, going off oil to renewables. So put a price on carbon and share the revenue from that by giving checks every year to every Canadian. And those who are lower income get to keep more of it. There will also be a national pharmacare program which will save in the buying of drugs because there will be one body buying for all 10 provinces and territories rather than each province having its own separate drug formulary and separate buying group. There will be more home care to assist seniors to age at home and be safe. And there will also be support for health care for seniors, for intergenerational activities for seniors. We know that seniors enjoy babies, and it's important for babies to meet with and spend time with seniors, especially for those who don't have grandparents living nearby. So there are lots of great programs in the Green Platform that'll benefit seniors.
All right, well, thank you for that, Patricia Sinnot. Same question to Kim Rudd. We know that StatsCan has released documents for the first time in our history that the majority, that there are in fact more people over the age of 65 than under the age of 15 in our country's history. So the question is, what is your party's plan or plans to ensure that these same individuals who were the backbone of our country and made Canada what it is today are not forgotten, and that they will have the chance to live above the poverty line and won't have to live in poverty rather, and will continue to work well into their retirement years?
Well, I've already talked about our affordable housing strategy for seniors and senior facilities, and I think that was a huge announcement in terms of our infrastructure plan for growth for Canada. As I go knocking on doors, and I've talked to a few seniors who are selling their house because they can't afford to live there anymore. They're living longer than they ever anticipated they were going to. So the reality is they need the equity in their home to be able to pay for the next number of years. We too have said 67 is not the right, we need to take it back to 65. I look at some of the the professions out there, particularly I think of nurses and some of the trades and just people in general. Working to 67 is a big ask. And we as a country should be, I think, providing those supports to our seniors to allow them to retire at 65. Let's put the rumors to rest right now. Russ started it, I'll finish it. The Liberal Party is not taking away income splitting, pension income splitting for seniors. We are keeping it. We think it's good public policy. Frankly, seniors are living a lot longer, and we need them to be able to stretch the money they have for as long as they have and allow them to live in dignity and in a way that they want to live. They deserve that. We announced today $3 billion in home care services, as well as supports for mental health and other things to do with the health care of our seniors. Home care is becoming one of the biggest needs, I guess, of our senior population. People do want to stay at home, whether it's in their own home or a senior's residence, or whether it's living with family. They can do that for a longer period of time and be much more comfortable with home care. We've made that commitment, and I'm very proud of our party for doing that.
Well, and now, Russ Christianson, same question to you, sir. In light of the recent numbers released from Stats Canada, for the first time in the history of this country, the number of people over the age of 65 outnumbers the number of people under the age of 15. So the question is, what would the NDP party plan, or what do they plan to do to ensure that these same individuals who were the backbone of our country, made Canada what it is today, are not forgotten and will have the chance to live a life above the poverty line and not have to continue to work well into their retirement years?
Well, thank goodness for Statistics Canada and the long-form census, and no thanks to Mr. Harper and Tony Clement, because they both cut the long-form census. In order to get these kind of statistics and to have reliable statistics that we can base social policy and business planning and economic development and jobs plans, we need the long-form census. So we would bring that back, because we need that. Now, in terms of seniors, we would double the CPP, the Canada Pension Plan. Only 17% of private sector employees have a pension plan. That means 83% of people don't. We need the Canada Pension Plan. It's right now the maximum benefit's only at $12,000. Even in the United States, which is a more so-called free market, laissez-faire economy, they have old age security at $25,000 a year. So we need to double that. We'll also increase the old age security supplement, and I already said the GIS, the guaranteed income supplement. One of the things that's happening with an aging population is that we have increasing numbers of people with dementia and Alzheimer's. So we will introduce a dementia strategy and Alzheimer's strategy right across the country. The Harper government refuses to take leadership on these key issues, especially around healthcare. They want to take $36 billion out of healthcare over the next 10 years while we have an aging population. That just doesn't make any sense at all. We will reintroduce the $36 billion over time. It's a long-term strategy. We can do that because we're increasing corporate tax rates from 15% to 17%. And we need to make sure corporations are paying their fair share of taxes. First, the Liberal government cut corporate taxes from 26% to 21%. Then the Harper government cut it from 21% to 15%, with the economic theory that they would actually increase jobs.
All right, well, thank you very much. Okay, well, now we open it up for open debate. And Patricia, you had your hand up first.
Yes, thank you. Greens would also boost the Canada Pension Plan. We don't need provincial pension plans. We have a healthy federal pension plan which we can grow. Right now the contribution by each party, employee, employer, is 4.95%. So the plan is over a number of years to grow that to 7.0%, but do it gradually. And also palliative care for seniors. This is something that's very important, to know that you're going to get good quality palliative care near the end of your life. And further to that, Greens also support the judicial decision to allow assisted suicide or death with dignity. And I think we need to look at the province of Quebec and how the Order of Pharmacists are leading the way there in terms of how that is to be managed. And certainly a lot of consultation needs to happen, but that is something that the Greens support.
Okay, Russ, you had your hand up.
So we've had about 10 years of Liberal governments in Ontario, more than 10 years, and we have lineups for long-term care for seniors in this province. So one of the things the NDP will do is increase the number of long-term care homes, keep them public, not private, keep them public because they're more affordable and efficient. We'll also introduce a comprehensive home care strategy right across the country. People are not getting enough home care. They're not getting the home care that they need. One of the interesting projects I was involved with here in Northumberland-Peterborough South was the Northumberland Hills Hospital.
Yeah, I'm going to stop. I have to stop you there, Russ, because we are going to be, we're sliding into healthcare.
Okay.
We are going to be taking a healthcare question.
But for seniors, pharmacare is important, and we'll introduce a program for that.
And we'll give Kim the last word on this question.
I want to say there's a couple of things. I guess I keep talking about innovation, and I think one of the things we have to do is look at healthcare differently. When I talked about the 10% increase in GIS...
Okay, Kim, I'm going to have to stop you because we're not talking about healthcare right now.
This is about seniors. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
You can swing it back that way.
No, 10% increase in GIS for seniors. Mm-hmm. What we said we would do is index that to a senior price index, not the consumer price index it currently is, because seniors use a lot of different things than the average Canadian does, and often things are more expensive depending on possibly a personal medical need or a device need or various things like that. So I think it's important when we make these announcements about what we're going to increase, how we're going to address that going forward.
Okay, well, that's going to bring it to a close on this question. We're going to take our first break of the evening. So you are watching TVCOGECO's comprehensive coverage of election 2015. I'm Dave Glover. We'll be right back. And welcome back to TVCOGECO's comprehensive coverage of election 2015. This is Behind the Ballot. Joining us in the studio are 3 of your 4 candidates vying for your vote on October 19th for Northumberland-Peterborough South. In the studio, Kim Rudd for the Liberal Party of Canada, Patricia Sinnot for the Green Party of Canada, and Russ Christianson for the New Democratic Party of Canada. Adam Moulton declined our invitation to attend. Well, from the retired senior, we now move in the opposite direction to younger Canadians, the younger generation. It seems that in every election, federally, provincially, or even municipally, youth issues are not addressed or heard during the campaign. One issue, though, that affects your youth or teenagers is the ever-increasing cost of post-secondary education. Now, it's gotten so bad that in some cases, families who are classified as middle or low income cannot afford to send their children to college or university. What plans or policies does your party have to ensure that all youths, rich or poor, are able to complete their post-secondary education? We'll start with Kim Rudd.
Okay, thank you, Dave. A couple of things. One, we decided, as a Liberal Party, we went across the country and talked to colleges and universities about what some of the challenges are that they're having. And one of the things they talked to us about was students, particularly in the colleges, about students wanting to go into trades. And as we know, we no longer have the shops, as I'll call them, that we had when we went to high school. And what they're finding is that they have young people coming in wanting to take an apprenticeship program, but they don't know how to hold a hammer. And that's a quote, not mine. So we put $25 million into pre-apprenticeship program to let's get these kids ready to go into those programs. Our historical infrastructure announcement will address that as well, because we have a problem in this province and in this country with regard to apprenticeship spots. Employers, it's a lot to take on an apprentice. It costs the employer money, and it is quite a process. So what we have done with this infrastructure announcement is create more jobs, therefore more apprenticeship programs. In terms of the post-secondary education itself, one of the things that we really want to focus on is what programs our youth are going into. There's a tendency sometimes to look at what I'll call the jobs of yesterday instead of the jobs of tomorrow. So colleges and universities, that's what they do. They put out program offerings and students take them, not necessarily knowing what direction that's going to take them or if there's a job at the end. And that's part of the challenge with the debt load that the students come out with, is because they have the program they want but there's no job and therefore they're struggling to pay it back. We're going to be talking more as a party in the next couple of weeks about the student loan process and loan forgiveness in terms of the federal student loan. So you'll hear more about that in the coming weeks.
All right, Kim, thank you very much for that. Same question to Russ Christianson. We are moving on to the younger generation. It seems that in every election, federally, provincially, and municipally, youth issues are simply not addressed, or they're even discussed during campaigns. One issue, though, that affects youth or teenagers is the ever-increasing cost for post-secondary education. It has gotten so bad that in some cases, families who are classified as middle and low income cannot afford to send their children for post-secondary education. What plans or policies does your party have to ensure that all youth, rich or poor, are able to access post-secondary education?
So it's a great question, and I have to disagree with you, Dave, about one thing, which is I've run in 5 elections. So I started in 2004, and now it's 2015. And every election, I've talked about making post-secondary education affordable. And if the NDP was in power, we would make it affordable. That's one of our top priorities. Students on average are graduating with about $28,000 in debt. It's way too much, and it sets their lives back. And then they're looking for meaningful employment that pays a decent wage, and all they can get is part-time contracts, $11 an hour, the minimum wage, and it's just not enough to live, let alone pay back debt. And I was talking to a student the other day, she's actually a nurse now, but she had another friend who was a teacher. And that teacher, just at 40 years old, has finally paid off her student debt. Now, the root cause of this goes back, again, to the Martin and Chrétien government, the Liberal government in the mid-90s, that cut the federal transfers to the provinces. The provinces cut the money to the universities and colleges, and the result was tuition in Ontario is now the most expensive in Canada. It's gone up 3 times in the last 15 to 20 years, while inflation has only gone up by 47%. When I went to business school at Queen's University, my tuition was $700 a year. Now it's $18,000 a year. That's ridiculous. I could never have afforded to go to business school at that price. So it is becoming more the purview for the wealthy. One last quick issue, and I know we'll have more time. When students graduate from college or university, they don't have decent jobs to go into. So we have a plan to get paid internships and co-op placements for graduating students so they can get their foot in the door and get that first job experience that's related to their field.
All right, well, we're going to open that question up to the floor, and the first person, oh, I apologize, Patricia. Almost cut your time, I apologize. Same question to you then. Over the past several years, although Russ would disagree with this statement, there hasn't been enough discussion about youth and access to post-secondary education. And this is an issue that has, in some cases, not allowed families of middle or low-income children to attend post-secondary education. What plans or policies do you have to ensure that youth, all youth, rich or poor, have the same access to post-secondary education?
The Green Party has a plan to provide free tuition for all students. It'll be phased in between now and 2020. So initially, the low-income students will get the free tuition first, and then by 2020 it will be free to everyone. Now, if you're living away from home, then of course there are the costs of room, board, housing, whatever. So it's still not solving the whole problem. But I think part of the problem is we've had too much talk and not enough action, and it's time to act for sure. As regards jobs after graduation, we do have a problem here because we seem to be educating and graduating students for no jobs. And we need better information. And this goes back to Russ's point about the long-form census. Yes, we need the long-form census, and Greens would bring that back. As well, we need better labor management information, because internationally Canada is known for not keeping good stats about jobs and what is going on in the country for the future. Like, where do we need? Where are the gaps going to be? Where are we going to need people in which trades? We know generally health and education are fields that people tend to find employment in. But beyond that, they're kind of stuck and you're making a gamble. Funding apprenticeships and summer employment experiences. I used something called, the acronym was SEED, S-E-E-D, Summer Employment something program. And whenever I applied for it, I got federal funding. I was able to hire a pharmacy student, give them 4 months experience. It was a minimum wage job, but those 4 months then counted towards their 12 months compulsory experience before they were licensed as a pharmacist. So there are ways, and we need to expand that kind of programming to encourage people to hire students. Thanks.
Oh, we're going to open up to the floor, and then Russ, I know you had your hand up first, so we're going to go with you.
One of the things that the NDP will do is for federal employees under federal jurisdiction, we will increase the minimum wage to $15 an hour. We're hoping that that'll provide leadership for the provinces to see, just like some of the jurisdictions in the United States, that a $15 minimum wage is kind of a basic level that we need in terms of employment. And I have to say, for small businesses, most good small businesses that want to keep talented people, they have a minimum wage at least $15, if not more. So I don't think it's going to be a burden on most small businesses. And I've worked with hundreds of small businesses. The other thing is stimulating job creation. So we've talked about that earlier on in this all candidates meeting, with the exception of Adam Moulton, who's not here. But there's also a huge opportunity other than just jobs. We have that retiring baby boom population. We need farm and business succession plans for the retiring owners. It's a massive opportunity for young people to get involved in entrepreneurial businesses. And I've been working with people nationally through the Cooperatives and Mutuals Canada to talk about how we can do that in terms of business succession. It's what we did with the Erin Theatre in Campbellford, Ontario. We took over as a not-for-profit cooperative in that theatre and kept it going from the retiring owner.
Okay, Kim, you had your hand up.
Yeah, you know, we've talked about the long-form census a couple of times, and certainly, as Russ has said and Patricia said, and I will say, as a Liberal Party, we absolutely will bring it back. It's just an example of what one ideological decision could be by Tony Clement and Stephen Harper to take it away. Even when it does come back, assuming it is not a Stephen Harper government, and that's still a big assumption, it could take up to 20 years for some of the data to be reliable enough that other countries will use it, and in fact that we can rely on it. And I think I don't know that we always understand that some of these things we hear about and we sort of dismiss a little bit. We don't understand the real consequences of it. And I'm just going to take a moment to, you know, Russ, this is, I think, our 8th debate, or 7th, I'm sort of maybe have lost track. But Russ keeps talking about the Chrétien-Martin years because everything's a Liberal fault. But I want to just say one thing. I wasn't around then. I certainly wasn't in government, nor was Justin Trudeau, nor were, I'd say, 90% of the people running for the Liberal Party right now. But what I do know is that Paul Martin is arguably one of the best finance ministers we've ever had. And they inherited such a mess from Mulroney. You may agree or disagree with how they did it, but they got $56 billion to pay off the largest debt created in history by Mulroney and left the Conservatives with a surplus that they blew through before the recession hit.
Okay,
So I just want to
I appreciate that, and we will probably get to that aspect in another question.
Thanks.
But we are talking about youth, and we're talking about getting them to work and helping that they have access to post-secondary education. Russ.
Yeah, I want to give an example. In Campbellford, the Campbellford-Seymour Community Foundation provides, and it's a small organization, but it's an example of what small organizations can do, provides youth employment opportunities with not-for-profit and public sector organizations each year. And in terms of Paul Martin as the finance minister, he took $54 billion out of the unemployment insurance fund to balance the budget. He made $400 million a year in annual cuts to the CBC.
Hey, Russ, I will cut you there. I'm going to cut you there because I'm sure we're going to talk about the economy and those things that may or may not have led to.
I'm rebutting her points.
No, I get that. I get that.
She's saying Paul Martin was the best finance minister. I don't agree.
Okay, and on that we'll leave it. We're going to move on to the next question. Our next question deals with something else that was mentioned earlier tonight, which is First Nations issues. And we've heard many stories of First Nations communities in this country trying for years to rectify land claims with not only this government, but also many former governments of Canada. And we've also heard many stories of poor living conditions on reserves. So the question is this: how will your government work with not only the province of Ontario, but all the other provinces to rectify land claim issues, as well as what actions will your government take to help the native reserves make sure they have clean water to drink and safe, sustainable communities? And we are going to start with Russ.
I'm really glad that First Nations issues are coming up in this debate, because it's one of those things that's often neglected. And we've already talked about the 2 First Nations we have here in our community. And there are outstanding treaty issues with the Williams Treaty and outstanding land claims issues right here. And of course, there are right across this nation. What the NDP will do is we will work nation to nation. So from federal government to First Nations group on an equal footing. We will review the Indian Act and make sure that it's meeting the needs of people. That may require that it's actually scrapped and we start from the beginning. But the point is that it's a process that we need to work together, table to table, with the First Nations and find out very clearly what their needs are and what they need in terms of moving forward to build more resilient communities that have their own local economy, that have the educational resources for young Aboriginal people, that have childcare available, that have water systems. There's about 140 First Nations communities right now that are in boiled water orders. They've been on them for years. It's a disgrace. The Harper government has completely failed Aboriginal communities in this society. And it was interesting at the residential school report presentation that the Minister, Valcourt, of Indian Affairs sat in the room while everyone else in the room gave the chief a standing ovation. And Mr. Mulcair was standing right beside him, and Valcourt refused to get up. So we need to also immediately do the inquiry for missing and murdered Indigenous girls and women, and we also need to implement the immediate recommendations, the ones that are the easiest to do as quickly as possible, from the residential school report.
Okay, we're going to move to Patricia Sinnot. Same question to you, dealing with First Nations. We've heard many horror stories of First Nations communities across this country trying for many years to rectify land claims with not only this government but other governments of the past. We've also heard about the poor living conditions on reserves. So the question is, how will your government, a Green Party government, work not only with the province of Ontario but all of the other provinces and territories to rectify land claims issues, as well as what actions will your party take to help the native reserves make sure they have clean water to drink and safe, sustainable communities?
Yes, thank you, Dave. The Green Party proposes a Council of Canadian Governments, which brings together federal, provincial, territorial, local, municipal, plus First Nations, Métis, and Inuit leaders to sit around the table as equal partners to develop policy and to make plans for the future to deal with issues like housing and education and health care and infrastructure. Chief Perry Bellegarde of the Assembly of First Nations has endorsed the Green Party plan. His announcement came out soon after Elizabeth May presented the plan on September the 9th. So by sitting down with First Nation, Métis, and Inuit leaders and developing a new governance model which meets their needs, then if they wish to scrap the Indian Act, that's certainly what the Green Party is prepared to do. And that is probably what we can look forward to doing. And then negotiating outstanding issues around land titles, treaties, and such is something that needs to happen as soon as possible. We need to respect the recommendations of the Truth and Reconciliation Committee report and work with these people to initiate an inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women, but also on the larger scale to take a look at violence against women in our society at large, because that's something that we've promised to address before and have never done a very good job at doing. Sort of like poverty. We brush it aside when other things take priority. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for that, Patricia. Next, Kim Rudd for the Liberal Party of Canada. The question to you with regards to First Nations. We've heard stories of communities living in this country that have tried for years with successive governments to negotiate land treaties, but also heard many stories about the poverty, the living conditions, the lack of clean water. How will your government work with not only the provinces and the territories, but with the First Nations to rectify land claim issues, as well as take action to help native reserves make sure they have clean water to drink and safe, sustainable communities?
Well, Dave, I certainly hope this is a question that will go into a discussion, because there's so much more that can be said. But certainly we as a party, Justin Trudeau is committed to implementing all, and I believe it's 94 items within the Truth and recommendations by the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. I think that is absolutely critical. We too will call an inquiry into the missing and murdered Indigenous girls and women. That's something. The number of women that whose lives have been lost and not addressed is something, as a country, I think we should be ashamed of, and something that needs to happen. I've already mentioned our huge infrastructure announcements in terms of the Aboriginal communities. I want to say that Justin Trudeau has created teams and councils within our party, and I'm proud to say that we have the largest number of Aboriginal First Nations candidates of any party. And those candidates, along with other stakeholders, have sat around and worked through and come up with our platforms and policies that address those issues of our Aboriginal communities. It's about having them in the conversation. It's about negotiating with them to make sure that they're getting what they need. The infrastructure announcement, as well as the education, speaks to the communities. Infrastructure certainly around housing and water. The education piece around changing communities. There's many challenges in especially our northern communities with suicide and drug addictions and alcohol addictions, and how you change those outcomes, a lot of that is through education. So our commitment to funding education on reserve, the same as off reserve, we see as a significant indicator to improving those outcomes.
Thank you for that, Kim. Now we're going to open it to the floor for open debate for 3 minutes. Russ, you had your hand up first.
Thanks, David. Jack Layton convinced Stephen Harper to do the apology in Parliament to First Nations people regarding residential schools. But that was only a beginning, and Mr. Harper's fumbled the ball since then. I think his apology was heartfelt. You could see the tears welling in his eyes. Who wouldn't? And yet, it's been fumbled. So what we need to do is we need to take traditional values of trust and build trust, honesty and respect with First Nations communities, and have an equal discussion with those people and make sure that we're meeting their needs and not taking them to court, retracted legal fights with the federal government, with First Nations communities regarding treaties and land claims. We need to treat people with respect and help them help themselves.
Okay, that's a great point. Kim, to you.
I believe this issue is a nonpartisan issue. It's something that all parliamentarians, all Canadians should be on board with. And Russ mentioned about some of the court challenges and the dragging of not just our Aboriginal communities, but certainly other organizations and people through our Supreme Court. I think this is the most number of Supreme Court challenges that any government's ever had. And of course, even when they lose, they challenge it again. I don't even know what the legal costs are. But I think this is about having a concerted effort to change the direction, to change the discussion, to change the outcome. And that only comes if everyone is on board and moving in the same direction. I get very unhappy when I see Stephen Harper trying to pit the rest of Canada against our Aboriginal communities. His culture of fear and divisiveness is what he promotes, and the only way we stop that is to be strong and say we are going to work to make sure that our Aboriginal communities get not just what they need, but frankly, what they have a right to as Canadians.
All right, Patricia Sinnot, we'll give you the last word on this question.
Okay. I'd like to mention that the First Nations population is the only group in Canada that has growing youth population. The demographics are there. So we really need to look ahead and help invest in youth, both on and off reserve, because I would say roughly as many people in First Nations communities live off reserve as on, so we can't just think that they're living within the boundaries. And we need to invest in all of the green programs that go towards helping youth get on their feet in terms of free tuition and apprenticeships, and the Sustainable Generations Fund that supports new entrepreneurs and small business development. The other issue, I have a comment to make as regards why problems have not been solved. The residential school situation, we're not taking children away to residential school anymore, but the fallout from that goes on for generations afterwards. And we cannot impose our ideas about health and healing on Indigenous people because they have other views on health and healing, and they actually have a number of ideas that are helpful to us in terms of in the justice system, sitting down a person who committed a crime with the victim of the crime and having them sort things out and see the impact of one on the other. And we need that same respect for traditional healing methods and healing circles to realize that Indigenous youth will be helped and supported in those far northern communities more effectively by encouraging Indigenous workers to help them rather than us going in with mental health workers and saying this is what you got to do.
All right, thank you for that. That was the last word on our First Nations conversation. It probably won't be the last time we discuss First Nations issues, of course. Next, we're going to be talking about job creation. That's something we've all kind of alluded to. It's become apparent over the past several years that large manufacturing jobs are disappearing here in Canada. Jobs are also disappearing. No longer can communities hope for large plants of 300 to 400 workers being set up in their communities. And what is being set up in their communities, what is becoming more apparent and viable, are small companies setting up with 20 to 50 jobs. As a member of Parliament, how will you not only support the business looking to set up in our riding, but also help them to become sustainable so they prosper and become long-term entities for the business community? We're going to start with Patricia Sinnot with that question.
Okay. The first thing we need to do is raise taxes on large corporations, and the Green Party proposal is to take them from 15% back to 19%, which is what large corporations were paying in 2009. It's still very low when you look at the tax rate in the States. At the same time, we also propose lowering taxes payable for small businesses and also reducing red tape for people who want to set up small businesses or grow a small business. The Sustainable Generations Fund is the pool of money that will be used to support the development of and setting up of small businesses. And we know that they employ the largest proportion of Canadians, whether it's 70% or 80% is the figure Russ used. But a lot of people are employed in small businesses, so they're well worth supporting. And we have a business park here in Port Hope that is eagerly looking for occupants. So I hope that some of these endeavors bring some more jobs and businesses to small manufacturing. Definitely clean technology. By stopping the subsidy of big oil, which right now is $1.3 billion a year, Greens would redirect that to the development of clean technologies and supporting businesses who will develop that technology and install those systems so that small communities can then be energy self-sufficient in terms of solar, wind, thermal, geothermal, biomass, and on our coastlines, tidal sources of energy. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Patricia. To you, Kim Rudd, same question is regarding job creation. It has become apparent over the past several years that large manufacturing jobs are disappearing in Canada, and no longer can communities like ours, for instance, hope for large plants of 300 to 500 workers being set up within their communities. What is becoming more apparent and viable is small companies, small businesses that hire 20 to 50 people. As an MP, what will you do to not only support these businesses looking to set up in our riding, but also how will you help them become sustainable so that they prosper and become long-term entities within our business community?
Well, I mentioned earlier about my jobs plan for Northumberland-Peterborough South, and one of the elements of that is something called smart manufacturing, because to your point, Dave, we're not going to get another large manufacturer coming back. But there are lots of manufacturers out there that are in the 30, 40 to 70 employee range. And I'm just going to give an example of some of the technology. You may know, and I think I mentioned earlier, we have been a plastics cluster in this riding previously, and it was sort of left to wane. And there is an interest in getting it back. We all know about solar panels. They're on people's roofs, they're popping up everywhere on barns. They're not very environmentally friendly. They weigh a lot. There has to be often special supports to put them up. There is, and I believe it's out of Australia, a group that invented solar panels printed on 3D printers. And they're a much more environmentally friendly product. They're light, they degrade easier and better. That's the innovation and technology that I was talking about. And one of the commitments we have made, the $200 million to supporting researchers, scientists, innovation and technology in this country. And it will be around things like that. Also, I mentioned agricultural innovation, arts and culture. We need to talk about that. In this riding particularly, we have very talented artists and cultural entities, and I could probably stand here for 10 minutes and only name half of them. We used to have in this country a much easier opportunity as artists, for instance, to promote themselves outside of their area. So it's great that we have them in this area, and we may go and see their productions here. But we need to be promoting that in Ontario, in Canada, and the world. And we have committed to putting in supports to make sure artists and artisans have those opportunities outside of the local market.
All right, thank you very much for that, Kim. Russ Christianson, same question to you, dealing with job creation. It has become apparent over the past several years that large manufacturing jobs are disappearing in Canada. No longer can communities like ours rely on large plants that hire 300 to 400 people. What we are seeing, however, and what's becoming more apparent and viable, are small companies that set up between 20 and 50 jobs. So as Member of Parliament for Northumberland-Peterborough South, what will you do to not only support these businesses that are looking to set up in our riding, but also what will you do to help them become sustainable so that they prosper in our long-term entities within our business community?
Yeah, I wouldn't give up on large manufacturing. I think, for example, right now, very topical, the Trans-Pacific Partnership negotiations that are going on right now during this election. I don't personally feel that the Harper government has the authority to sign such an agreement during an election period. Let's wait until we have the final election, the results, and we can debate that secret agreement in Parliament. Now, Mr. Harper has placed all his economic bets on the tar sands in Alberta, and obviously that is a failed plan. Because of that bet, and because no focus on manufacturing and all this focus on free trade agreements, we've lost 400,000 manufacturing jobs in Ontario since 2006. So I don't think we should give up on manufacturing. I think we need to kickstart manufacturing. The lower dollar is definitely helping in terms of Canadian exports of manufactured goods. Our #1 trading partner is the United States. They need the goods that we have. We have a highly educated workforce. They're very skilled, incomparable any workforce in the world. Fantastic workforce. So in terms of manufacturing, we can do an accelerated capital cost allowance. We can encourage research and development to move away from, over the longer term, to move away from this fossil fuel economy, which is causing climate change, but which is also just enriching the resource base rather than focusing on manufacturing. The small businesses. We are going to cut the small business tax rate from 11 to 9%. All the other parties have copied that, which is great. I'm glad they're doing it because a good policy is a good policy. We will also focus on a diversified economy. It's what Peter Lougheed, the former Premier of Alberta, used to focus on, and they've obviously lost that focus. With an NDP government in Alberta now, they're moving back to that strategy.
Okay, thank you for that. We're now going to open this debate to the floor, and again, it deals with attracting business. Russ, you've got your hand up first. Go ahead.
Well, I was a little bit shocked, Kim, that you said solar panels are not environmentally friendly. I mean, I've worked with many engineers. I'm not an engineer, but I am a business developer, and I've worked with renewable energy businesses and cooperatives, and solar panels are an incredible boon for communities, for electricity generation. I don't think you should be kicking them down the road. I think it's great that there's other ways. There are integrated solar panels on roofing materials themselves, so you don't have to reinforce the roof and place brackets and put solar panels on. The other thing is we have to be very careful around solar panels with agricultural land use, because there's some very large industrial solar farms being installed with, I don't think, enough foresight in terms of what we do with that agricultural land. In terms of that energy conservation, it's not just renewable energy, but energy conservation. That'll create a lot of green jobs.
Okay, I'm going to give Kim the opportunity to respond to that. Now, we are going to stick to the 3 minutes on this particular question because we are running short of time. We're going to make it to our next question. So if, we're going to have Kim respond to that, and then Pat, you have the floor.
My point was, and maybe I wasn't clear, is that technology will take us to the next better thing, research and innovation. When solar panels first came out, and to the point of actually disposing of them, they are not environmentally friendly. My husband is an engineer. And so I want us to create things that will give us better green energy. But as we put more money into research and development, as we've said we will, and in innovation and technology, we'll get better at that. And they'll be better for our environment. They'll be more efficient. Look at the windmills that used to be huge. And now look at how small they are and circular as opposed to what's the word I'm looking for? They're small and they go like this as opposed to like they. Thank you very much. Yes.
Okay, Patricia, I think we're going to give you the last word on this one, I think.
I belong to an organization called Community Power Northumberland. So it's a not-for-profit group, and this is the group that has put the solar panels on the Columbus Center over in Cobourg, and the Baltimore Arena and the Cobourg Arena, and is currently looking at putting solar panels on 2 sites in the municipality of Port Hope and another in Cobourg. So that is a project. It's people getting together that want to produce renewable energy within the community, close to home. So it's an exciting project. I'm not an investor because I invested 4 years ago in solar panels on my roof. And I didn't need to reinforce my roof. I had an engineer inspect the roof, but my grandfather built that roof over 100 years ago. Back then, the lumber was real lumber. 1 inch was 1 inch.
Okay,
So,
well, that's definitely sustainability. Just a quick, I think we've got about 30 seconds left, perhaps. Really quickly reminding you back to what the question is, and it was about job creation and bringing jobs here and helping those jobs to be maintained and sustainable. Anyone else got a point on that issue? Russ, quickly,
Well, just
15
very
seconds.
quickly, one thing that the businesses that I work with, we use a triple bottom line. So we make sure that it's got to be economically viable, obviously, to work and to be long-term. But it's also got to be socially nurturing. So it's got to create good jobs. It's got to provide opportunities for people who are less fortunate, hopefully, disabled people, etc., but also environmentally sustainable.
Okay, and Kim, last word to you quickly.
Just add a couple of things. The lower dollar certainly can help manufacturing, but the trouble is so much of it has died away. It takes a long time to tool up. It also takes equipment. And as I was out talking to some folks, farmers in the north part of the community, they're talking about how the dollar has really affected their purchase power when they need to buy their big equipment in the combines. They're struggling with that. So I think access to capital is one of the key things that we need to look at in terms of small business and business creation.
Okay, well, that's going to bring it to us our next and I believe final question for this evening. It's dealing with healthcare. So over the past several years, all hospitals have had to make cuts to staff and services just to come under budget. On March 31st of 2014, the healthcare accord between the federal and provincial governments officially expired. So with the ending of the accord, it saw transfer payments of $16.5 billion being eliminated. If your party is elected, excuse me, what will your government do to ensure that there is ample funding for healthcare so all residents of Canada can enjoy the healthcare system we currently have? Kim Rudd, you're going to lead us off on this one.
Okay, great. The healthcare accord is something I've been talking about for some time. We knew, and Stephen Harper knew, it was expiring in 2014, yet he didn't have, during his time as Prime Minister, have meetings with the Health Minister and the Premiers to negotiate that new important agreement. We are a federation. We are not a country of provinces and territories. We are a federation, and we require federal government leadership to create the framework for healthcare. Mr. Harper did give it a 2-year extension. It expires next year. You do not write these accords on the back of a napkin. Today we announced our healthcare plan. We announced, as I said, $3 billion to home care. We also announced the improving access and reducing cost of prescription medications, or pharmacare as other people call it, and a pan-Canadian collaboration on health innovation and increasing availability of mental health. We're finding within our population, we look at our veterans, we look at people who are marginalized, that we're seeing more and more mental health care issues come, and it needs to be addressed. We've made those commitments, and we've made a commitment to ensure that the health care accord addresses the fact that all Canadians should have equal access to health care, no matter your circumstance, your age, your background, your physical need, where you live. You know, in rural communities and northern communities, sometimes there is a bit of a challenge getting that care, and we need to make sure that we put the resources in there for that to help happen. If we're going to meet the needs of what we know is an ever increasing aging population in this country, we have to put the resources in to make sure that we have a healthcare system that can sustain us, not just for this generation, but and beyond. The provinces need a partner to make sure that they can manage the healthcare dollars and get the healthcare dollars they need, and Justin Trudeau's that partner.
Thank you, Kim. Russ Christianson, same question to you, dealing with health care. Over the last several years, there have been major cuts to staff and services as hospitals are forced to come under budgets. On March 31st of 2014, the health accord between the federal and provincial governments expired. With the ending of that accord, we saw the transfer payments of $16.5 billion being eliminated. If your party is elected to form the government, how will you ensure that there is ample funding for health care so all residents of Canada can enjoy the health care system that we now have?
So Canadians are very proud of their healthcare system, and it has been starved of resources over the years. Paul Martin, and I give him credit, brought back the 6% escalator per annum. The NDP would return us to that. Mr. Harper wants to get rid of that. That would be $36 billion or more over the next 10 years. We have a Canada Health Act here in Canada that all the provinces and territories and the federal government have agreed to. The federal government should be at 25% funding. We're only at about 17 or 18%. That's a lot of money because it's billions of dollars. Now, these free trade agreements also open our public health care to the threat that private companies will come in. In Ontario, the Liberal government under Mr. McGuinty and Kathleen Wynne have allowed P3 hospitals to come into this province and private clinics. And the P3 hospitals cost $8 billion more to create 22 hospitals that the public sector could have done very well. One of the things that we need to do to maintain a single-payer, universal health care system is maintain public funding and public delivery of those healthcare systems. So we also have families that don't have access to a family doctor. We will hire 7,000 doctors, nurses, nurse practitioners, and other health practitioners across Canada. And it's not just about hospitals. It's about preventative care. It's about pharmacare. If people used the drugs, if they could afford to use them, because right now they're escalating, we see hedge funds playing games with pricing, then we have fewer hospital visits, we have fewer hospital stays, and it really would help people be a healthier population. So we also need to look at preventative care and the social determinants of health. And those include housing, proper nutrition, social interaction, education, and an adequate income.
Thank you for that, Russ. Okay, last to you, Patricia Sinnot. Same question with regards to health care. Over the past several years, as we all know, all hospitals have had to make staff cuts and service cuts just to remain under budget. As of March 31st, the health care accord between the federal and provincial governments has expired. And that has meant a loss of $16.5 billion from the federal government being transferred. If your party is elected to government, how will you ensure that there is ample funding for health care so all residents of Canada can enjoy the health care that we have come to enjoy?
Yes, the Green Party of Canada is very concerned about maintaining Canada's publicly funded universal healthcare system and renewing the Canada Health Accord, strengthening it, using the Council of Canadian Governments, again that's federal, provincial, territorial, plus municipal, local, plus First Nations, Inuit and Métis leaders, all brought together. That would be the group that would do the policy development and planning for health and other departments. Primary health care, unfortunately, the province of Ontario began closing hospitals nearly 20 years ago now, before really taking a look at investing in health promotion and illness prevention. So I mentioned my bias earlier that my focus and passion is reforming primary health care and ensuring that people in all communities have access to interdisciplinary teams from a variety of providers. So it's not just about doctors and nurse practitioners, but it also includes dietitians and pharmacists and physiotherapists and mental health workers. And that's a very important part of it. Right now, we have that to some extent through family health teams, for instance, in Cobourg, or the Community Health Centre in Port Hope. But we do not have 24/7 coverage. So we need to expand and make that coverage round the clock so that people don't have to go to the emergency department off hours because there's nowhere else to go. I mentioned earlier the National Pharmacare Program, which Greens will bring in, and support for mental health services and preventive dental care for all youth under the age of 18, because we know that healthy teeth leads to a healthy body.
All right, well, thank you very much for that, Patricia. Now we're going to open this conversation up to the floor regarding health care, long-term sustainable funding so that Canadians can enjoy the health care that we've come to become accustomed to. Russ, you had your hand up first.
I did. I heard Justin Trudeau's announcement today about health care, and I was looking at the numbers because I was trained as an accountant, and the numbers just don't add up. So it looks like Mr. Trudeau is not going to fully fund the 6% escalator, and I'd like to ask him about that. The other one is, back in July, Mr. Trudeau promised $2.7 billion for Aboriginal health, and the announcement today had $1.7 billion. So I'd like Kim to address those two shortfalls that are apparent from previous announcements, but also the numbers just don't add up.
All right, Kim, we'll let you answer those questions.
So just to be clear, did he say that?
Yes, he did, and it was in the announcement today.
So can you give me what his quote was, what he said?
Well, the quote was that he would...
Because I was out knocking on doors, I didn't see it.
Well, it's your party. You should know the policy.
I'm
asking you, I added up the numbers, and they didn't add up to the 6% escalator. It was quite a few $1 billion short, and there was a previous announcement in July, to repeat myself, that there would be $2.7 billion for Aboriginal health care, and today's announcement was $1.7 billion. So those are the numbers that I saw.
Okay, so what I would say is I was out knocking on doors. I didn't see his speech. So I do have the policy notes. So I won't, you're telling me he said something that certainly wasn't in my notes, so I'll take your word for it, but I don't know exactly what he said. What I will say is that the Parliamentary Budget Officer, Kevin Page, said that our costing was doable and reasonable and a good plan. And he said the NDP's plan was full of,
I'm not talking about the costing. I'm talking about health care and Aboriginal communities, what was promised and then what was actually announced. That's what I'm talking about.
You are.
We had a number of economists cost our plan and they all said it was realistic. So go ahead,
Kevin Page.
Answer my question, please. My question is...
Do I get to?
Well, yeah, go ahead.
Thank you.
Answer
So let me finish my sentence. So Kevin Page, the Parliamentary Budget Officer, said that the NDP platform was Swiss cheese because there were so many holes. I am not.
That's ridiculous.
He said that. There is a quote, and you know that, Russ. He did say that.
There's many economists, private sector economists that have said it's good.
Did he say it?
I haven't seen the quote, but I'm happy to read it if you show it to me.
He said it. So I guess.
Are you going to answer my question? I'm not interested in Kevin Page. I'm interested in Aboriginal health and our healthcare system.
What Justin Trudeau, I believe, said about Aboriginal health, again, I didn't see his conversation today, is that there is money in the current budget that has not been spent. That money will be used, and additional money will be added onto it to get to the number. I think that's reasonable and responsible. We're completely transparent. You can certainly go on and look at the full costing.
I've looked at the full costing.
You've looked at the whole document?
I added up the numbers and they didn't add up.
Let's just say my math and our math obviously adds up to yours.
You haven't done the math because you weren't looking at it today.
No, I said I didn't hear his speech.
Let me just clarify if I can then, because the point that you're making, Russ, is that Justin Trudeau made an announcement today.
Correct.
I didn't see it.
And Kim's response to that was she didn't see that announcement. So I'm just going to say we'll probably have to end that part of it if we could, because you're arguing something that your opponent clearly hasn't seen.
Well, she's the Liberal candidate. She should know those things.
And I understand that. Okay, that's going to wrap it up for us on this segment. I want to thank all of our participants. As we all hear now the closing statements, we will go in reverse order of how we started. So we started with Russ, Patricia, and Kim. We're going to finish tonight with Kim, Patricia, and Russ. Kim Rudd, you have the first 2 minutes for closing statements.
2 minutes. Thank you, Dave. Well, this is a change election, but it's about real change. It's not just about a different government, it's about a better government. I said in my opening that I really want people to pay attention to what Stephen Harper is doing. The goal is to make sure that Stephen Harper is not the Prime Minister after this election. He is really using the politics of fear and division to try and convince Canadians that that's the most important thing we as Canadians should be paying attention to. But as Canadians, we know it's not. We know it is about jobs, affordable housing, tax reduction for middle-income Canadians, a better plan for infrastructure, and a more generous and tax-free Canada Child benefit that will lift 316,000 children out of poverty. There are many things that we are addressing in our plan for growth. This election must be about a plan to get our economy rolling, get it kick-started, and get Canadians working. And in Northumberland-Peterborough South, more than anywhere, we need that plan. I have been an advocate for this community for over 30 years. I'm a small business owner. I have started businesses. I have grown businesses. I have mentored business owners. And the reality is we know that that is where our jobs are going to come from. They are going to come from small business. And we need to be spending our energies and time and do that. In fact, that's what I'm doing and what I have been doing since I was first nominated in 2009. We've knocked on over 35,000 doors in this riding, and we're hearing overwhelmingly that people want change. I'm going to ask you to consider the fact that better is always possible. Thank you.
Kim Rudd. Okay, on to Russ Christianson. Sorry, Patricia Sinnot. I don't know what it is about you, but for some reason I said, just to you, please, for your closing 2 minutes. I apologize.
Climate change is real. Choosing between jobs and the environment is not an option. Falling oil prices mean that half of Albertans are living paycheck to paycheck, and yet more projects are coming online and production is increasing. The oil sands are the largest single emitter of greenhouse gases in Canada. It's got to stop. Rather than transporting bitumen by rail, pipelines, or tankers to be refined elsewhere, Greens support refining bitumen in Alberta, thereby creating good jobs. Instead of subsidizing big oil to the tune of $1.3 billion per year, Greens will invest in clean technology, apprenticeships, and energy from renewables, as well as small businesses that retrofit homes and public buildings to reduce energy waste, to diversify Canada's economy and get off oil. Research shows that green economies actually provide twice the jobs of the old oil-based economy. Many thanks to TVCOGECO, Mark and Dave and your helpers for organizing this event. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to so many residents of Northumberland-Peterborough South. I hope you will go to greenparty.ca to find out more about the Green Party platform and how it will invigorate Canada's economy, build sustainable communities, support small business development, encourage people to eat local, engage First Nations as equal partners, enable all to share in Canada's wealth, and leave a legacy of clean water and air as well as good jobs for our grandchildren. Thank you.
And Russ Christianson, your final comments tonight.
I'd like to thank the viewers tonight. I'd like to thank my fellow candidates, and I'd like to thank COGECO. And I'm going to challenge Mr. Adam Moulton to come to the next all candidates meeting. You're missing a lot of fun, Adam. You should come out. The more all candidates meetings you come to, the more practice you'll get and you'll get better at it. So please come to the all candidates meetings. Stand up to your leader and be a leader yourself. This election is about trust. Who do you trust to bring the change to Ottawa that we need? Mr. Harper needs to be fired. The NDP and Tom Mulcair are the best choice to do that. The Liberals have a long trail of broken promises. In 1993's Red Book, they broke 130 promises, including a national child care program that was never introduced. Mrs. Wynne, the provincial premier and Liberal government, never talked about privatizing Hydro One during the provincial election, and yet there she is, privatizing Hydro One against the will of 80% of Ontario citizens. Ms. Wynne, you should listen to the citizens and stop the privatization. On October 19th, I asked for your vote. Please vote Russ Christianson, NDP, and we'll bring the change to Ottawa that everybody needs and wants.
Thank you very much for that, Russ Christianson. Well, I want to take the opportunity to thank all of the candidates who attended, who are running here in Northumberland-Peterborough South, and thank them for attending TVCOGECO studios and participating in this all-candidates debate. I also want to remind the viewers that an invitation was extended to Adam Moulton for the Conservative Party of Canada. He declined to attend. And I'd also like to remind the voters that October 19th is Election Day. And I would remind viewers and voters to participate in this federal election. You've been watching Behind the Ballot, TVCOGECO's comprehensive, extensive coverage of the 2015 federal election. On behalf of myself and our volunteers here at TVCOGECO, I want to thank you for watching. I'm Dave Glover.